Zovaal was WoW's worst villain ever, right? I mean, more than just being pretty boring, he actively damaged that which he was grafted onto. Well, as Ian Bates, or the red shirt guy, pointed out, the Incarnates are way more interesting villains than the Jailer was, despite having almost no build-up and being totally new to this expansion. And that kind of sparked a thought. How? Why? I mean, sure, they're no Arthas, but remember, it took a full game and an expansion to tell the story of Arthas, and we have only seen a tiny slice of the Incarnates so far. Have Blizzard actually learned how to make good villains again? How have they been able to do it with so little screen time? And is the third part of this triplet my sponsor segue? Yes. Squarespace.com/Bellular Gaming, the place to rapidly establish yourself on the web. Build your site for free today and then send it live with code Bellular Gaming for 10% off your first purchase. Squarespace has an awesome range of tools to help you succeed online. I mean, take bio sites. You could have something that honestly looks a bit naff, or you could use Squarespace bio sites. They do them real well. They look absolutely great. You can have multiple bio sites with unlimited links, animated backgrounds, and even features like tipping and crowdfunding, all with analytics. It's a perfect way to just get started. I mean, what if you're a consultant, or maybe you have a reservation-based business? Well, Squarespace Talk lets you handle reservations for all of that. If you want to do memberships, like for your newsletter or whatever, you can just do that, letting you run your own membership site on your actual site, your actual domain, rather than just you having a page on some other business's site. Going through what they've built with their other features like scheduling, like e-commerce, it is clear that they are focused on making easy-to-use tools that let you run your business as simply and efficiently as you can. A one-stop solution to your web presence problems. So whether you're doing some email newsletter stuff, have a community, have products to sell, or just want a link in bio site that actually stands out, or maybe a beautiful portfolio to help you land that next gig, Squarespace has you covered. So build your site for free today using their award-winning templates and squarespace.com/Bellular Gaming for 10% off your first purchase when you're ready to send it live. The Incarnates and Primalists are a new concept to Dragonflight, but they're not an out-of-nowhere threat. They existed in the world before, we just didn't happen to know. So why aren't we calling it an ass pull? Well, for a start, any villain that doesn't pretend they've been part of the universe since the very start of time is going to be an improvement on what we just had. The Incarnates haven't influenced the entire history of our universe, right? Without our knowledge. Like, of course, how the Jailer was surgically inserted into the game, like a handful of darts thrown blind. But I don't want to sit here and just be all like, well done, Blizzard, you avoided destroying the whole lore and making a huge mistake. Here's your lore badge. Take your gun back, officer. You're back in the team. I'm not going to do that because they've actually gone a bit further than that, and they've done a good-ass job. The Incarnates may not be an Arthas tier villain or some award-winning, like, deep set of characters, but what they are is really well done in a bunch of ways. The first major win was how they've been introduced by characters that we know, not like just by the game. The first time we are introduced to Raszageth is when she escapes. That makes a hell of a lot of sense. It's the first time we know about her, and it's also when she re-emerges into the world. It's a mad dash to stop her from being freed in the first place, and it's all being led by none other than a Grim Totem. That is a name that we recognize. Evil Tauren, shamanism, elements, we know those. She's called the Mistress of Storms, the Storm Eater, which, goes kinda hard. The fact people of Azeroth have been recruited by her and others into this rogue faction called the Primalists, and so many of them are like the shaman races, and oddly some night elves, well, that all actually does hint at the Incarnates leading a very real revolution, and being, by virtue of numbers, kind of maybe a group with a point. I mean, that's still a bit threadbare, but Raszageth herself is not. The first bit of her dialogue is about the elements, and based on our history with Ragnaros, Alakir, and Therazane, we get that instant connection to old journeys, old adventures, older content, but not in the Shadowlandsy way of contextualizing stuff. It's just familiar, and we get it, and it feels like it's a part of the world. Then there's her actual character and relationships. Her voice, it's expressive, emotive. Her dialogue is not cold and lifeless like the jailers. It's pithy and smug. The elements sing. She reveled in Neltharion's death and threatens Rathian, who cowers under her with the same fate.
Let the storm be the harbinger of our return.
That's all fun stuff. And she immediately has a motive, right? Scour the world of the Titan's stain. Alexstrasza and Nosdormu introduce her more properly later, and the way they animate and deliver their lines about how dangerous these incarnates are, but how they are family, different now, but the same once, it works. You do get a sense, right, of personal history. So, we have a clear motive, check. We have some character, some relationships, check. We've also got her power level being shown by dwarfing Rathian, causing everybody to flee, check. But out of everything, the most important is that history, and how that actually makes her feel. And this is capitalized upon during her fight with Alexstrasza. Again, the dialogue, of course, is doing much of the work pretty quickly. Alex pleads for peace. Raz says that Alex stole thousands of years from them, betrayed the world and forced the Titans' edicts on them, and cast the Incarnates out, right? She was betrayed by her family and has had thousands of years to swirl around, all of this rage, all this emotion in her head, so obviously it becomes rage and spite. The constant lightning crackling out when she's on screen and speaking like she's mad. We can feel her anger. We get to see more of her in the raid too, when she lends Dathia the power that ultimately could defeat the raid, us, but also will definitely kill Dathia. You see that way that she clearly does not value Dathia at all as a person. She's just a tool, which adds a bit of a tragic layer to the primalist rank and file and a harder edge to what the Incarnates actually believe. We learn so much then from so little, right? Just a few interactions, but we do end up having a pretty complete picture of her. And despite her quick death in the raid, that is important. When she dies and her family are freed, everything we now know about her gets passed naturally over to them by association. All of her rage, her spite, and they surely feel the same. Except it's worse now, because we just murdered their sister. All of this is to highlight how much you've been made to understand and care about these characters in little small ways. And that is where good villains come from. Screen time, empathetic motives, and being just memorable characters with designs that stand out. That's all stuff that's actually happened here. I mean, Raszageth was so damn smug and fiery. She was always laughing brutally, delivering her lines all hammed up with glee. She felt like a proper, scary, crazy, over-the-top villain. And her brothers and sisters, they seem to match. The rest of the Incarnates. These are just fantastic designs, aren't they? They are different than traditional elementals, but they do represent them in humanoid form so beautifully, I think. The contrast between the aspect visages that of course look like mortals but are a bit enhanced and serve the purpose of them, mingling. And then these, which are comparatively monstrous. These forms, compared to the dragons, are obviously a more emotive and relatable format. And yeah, it is just the basic technique of go anthro, and you can have a humanoid face, do emotions, and that works. Dragons are cool, but yeah, it's seeing those human faces that's what makes us care, especially with how the artists have executed on these ones. It helps to give them personas immediately, to the point where people are actually kind of now a bit upset that we didn't see Raszageth's form, and I dearly hope that maybe in a flashback we actually get to see Raszageth's more humanoid form. When we see them then, Verinoth is cold and sullen about her sister's death. Farak is fired up, he wants vengeance, but Iridikron is the rock that keeps them on their purpose. Farak's movement tells you really its own story. He doesn't stand still when he's talking. He's hunched and he kind of bobs around a bit. The way that they speak is great too, even if they don't say much, with Farak's laughing, Verinoth's detached airiness, and how deadly serious Iridikron is as a contrast to the other three. Though they still speak, I would say, a bit too slowly and a bit too cinematically for most tastes. Even the way they fight, Verinoth and Farak effortlessly defeating one of the purple crystal elements, each in their own way, really highlighting their power, their mastery over these elements, right? And then, of course, Iridikron destroying a whole bunch of them, barely lifting a finger. That is the textbook, oh shit, these dudes are strong moment. And when you hear about Iridikron having made some terrible bargain, when you hear about him being like properly scary and how brutal he will be from the other dragons, then you see this and you're like, all right, they're kind of cartoonish in a way, but also this is Warcraft. It is a big, silly, fun fantasy universe. We know then that these three are on a warpath for revenge, just like Raszageth was. They inherit her motives, and importantly, they inherit her history. But we need to talk a bit more about Iridikron specifically, because people have noticed something extremely obvious. He is intentionally an analog to Deathwing. He is the Earth One, he's the serious leader, he's the strongest, and he's made terrible bargains. Unlike, say, the Jailer, who thought he was definitely going to win all the time and could never really fathom anything else, our new Earth Daddy actually knows that we shouldn't be underestimated. That immediately implies that these villains are actually intelligent, right? It puts a new spin in Raszageth too. She was overeager, but she was the Storm Dragon. It kind of makes sense that she was tempestuous. So of course she made the mistake of challenging us head on. That is a flaw in her character, not a flaw in writing, like, say, the Jailers, right? Or the Jailer, his loss felt like it was more because of our plot armor and not much else. But our victory here was because our enemy slipped up, and in haste, we were able to kill her. No ifs and buts. We just slapped her out of the sky without needing a strange MacGuffin. Iridikron, though, on the other hand, he knows stuff that we don't. He's trying to get a step ahead of us. We actually have a villain who is respecting the agency of the player characters and their allies, which is a big step up. If he's like Neltharion, then that comparison immediately copy-pastes everything that we know about Deathwing onto Iridikron. The upcoming madness, the fear of corruption after those bargains, that cold, serious nature, but maybe some notions of past nobility as well. We even have to ask if the forces are the same. Did Void play the dragon family against each other, or were there two forces using earth dragons as their pawns? Either way, family is a pretty big theme in Dragonflight, and for our villains. Family. It's the oldest trick in the book. Comparison, right? When you describe something, you can just get the point across very quickly by saying, oh, it's a bit like that thing. We do it for tastes, for games, for smells, for everything. So Blizzard did the same. Oh, your villains? Well, they're like the aspects, but anti-Titan instead of pro-Titan. And that means, like with Iridikron and Neltharion, we can think of them in a similar light, as these mythical storied beings with thousands of years of history behind them. It's an old trick, but it's one that works really damn well. The way that they talk in the cinematic hammers that home. They've done stuff like this before. We've got this whole unspoken history, like when you maybe meet a friend's other group of friends, and they all have stories to tell. You just didn't know about them. The Aspects and the Incarnates used to be family. So you can almost just imagine the scenes, Firak flying around Malagos until he snaps at him, or maybe Viranoth and Ysera sitting together, staring into the distance in silence. If Raszageth's visage form had long hair, maybe you could imagine Alexstrasza braiding it or something. That's the stuff that sets up good villains, possibility, right? That we're hinting at that older family dynamic. Nothing else really matters as long as this is done right, and we feel that our villains might actually be people. So I think that really answers that. They're not amazing villains, but they're actually pretty damn good, all things considered. So good work, Blizzard, and to be honest, I can't wait to see how 10.1 develops this cast of characters further. I think Firak will look pretty cool. I'm not sure where Viranoth will go, but I'm interested, and as for Iridikron, I know that they are drawing the comparison to Neltharion because they're doing a lot with the Black Dragonflight, a story that I'm already invested in, but I also know they are doing that because the ways in which Iridikron will deviate from the path of Deathwing as time goes on, those will be, I think, specifically contrasting him, and that will end up being pretty fascinating. So, there you have it. People actually do seem to be quite enjoying the Incarnates, so we just figured it would be fun to do a little bit of a case study on them and figure out exactly why they're going down better. I'm sure Blizzard's many teams did all of this quite intentionally, so it's not exactly going to be some brilliant feedback or killer video essay, but I think the point is, we're enjoying it. They're, in some ways, like Saturday morning cartoon characters, but actually, some of those things went really hard and were really fun. And we have plenty of time to develop these things further, with 10.07 specifically being a prequel patch to 10.1, and me already knowing from the PTR a lot of the lore books, a lot of the setup in 10.07, it actually makes me think that they have a greatly enhanced ability to tell their story and to make these things land. So let me know if you like this kind of breakdown, if you've got a real spicy topic that we should handle next. But other than that, thank you for watching. Let's try to pay attention to those small things a little bit more. We're often, a bit lost in the weeds of what's wrong and what kind of messes there are to fix up, and that can warp your perspective. Sometimes it's cool to just say, hey, look at the cool thing. Look how they did it. Nice. Can we have some more, please? Anyway, thank you for watching. Hope you found this to be interesting, and I'll see you next time.